All right. Well, thank you for everyone for jumping on. Hopefully you didn't get too wet with the weather today. Kept relatively dry, and training hasn't been too effective for those of you that have got your training grounds open at the moment. More than half you probably don't anyway. So probably a good time to get the rain in, right? So everyone should be able to see my little PowerPoint at the moment. Shout out if you've got any issues. Not that I think I could really help you. So for those of you that don't know me, I think I've pretty much met everyone on here anyway, but just in case, my name is Dan Shepherd. I am the Technical Director and Head of Football for Hills Football Association. I joined October before COVID. So this is hopefully going to be my first full season of Hills Football of a regular season. So interested to really see what that looks like. I don't know if we can really count last year to some extent, although we had a pretty successful crack at it with all the challenges that were thrown to us. But obviously that reduced my capacity to get out and interact in as much as we would hopefully do. So the hope going forwards is that I'll be able to get out and about a little bit more often. Coaching courses have definitely taken off, which has been a really good start for this year. And I've been out at the grounds a lot more than we were this time last year, because we were literally just about to go into lockdown last year. So good to see how 12 months has turned around. And credit to you guys at your clubs for doing a fantastic job and getting the players where they are. I believe from memory, Nicole updated us in our team meeting this morning that we had about 11,500 players registered on Play Football coming up for the season, which is actually is still higher than what we were this day last year. So yeah, that's really positive. Unfortunately, we can't go much bigger because we don't have the field space to be able to put too many more games. But shows that football is very in demand in our area, which is brilliant.
And just a question.
Go for it.
How does the numbers go compared to the 2019 season? The only reason I'm asking is really we shouldn't be counting 2020 because of the reduced weeks and everything. It'd be good if we knew what the 2019 figures were.
I will ask that question tomorrow. So 2020 numbers versus 2019. Yeah, because we're now at that point where great that the numbers are bigger than they were last year, but there would have been a few people that were holding off their rego because they saw COVID was coming. So in an AYL sense last year, we didn't play round one because we were playing Northwest, who had a couple of boys at Northwest in the boys high school, and they were the first school to get closed because of it. We played round two, and then I think we were shut down from then on. So there would have been a few that kind of hit this period and then held back in last season. But I might ask if we can get maybe even a 2018 sort of figure, try and get some decent stats for a bit of time. I know that we're roughly, from what I was talking about with Nicole, she was mentioning there's probably less over 45, over 35 sort of age groups, but we've got a bit of a spike in the younger age groups. But how true that is and to what extent, I don't know exactly. She's been squirreling away in our office with team allocations and working out the divisions at this stage. And I'm sure she'll resurface for air at the end of the week or something like that. We'll have a bit more of an accurate idea. So on to the purpose for this evening. This is ultimately a bit of a question time for you guys to hear some thoughts around club coach and the Miniroos, Mintildas sort of space, Mintildas, sorry. And then sort of how my role can help service your club from sort of a coaching position, which is ideally where we want to be helping as much as we possibly can. So, So for this evening, a little agenda. We'll talk about the coaching certificates that we've been running at the moment and the ones we've got planned, our future plan for coach accreditation, a little bit about the under 13s new playing format, 10v10, and sort of why that was endorsed. A little scenario to potentially assist with some pre-grading. Obviously, I know grading can be a bit of a beast that you've all just gone through or still potentially going through. Then the Miniroo space, and then open for you guys to sort of bring some questions to me or group discussion. So currently with community coaching courses, February and March, that's how many nights we've done of coaching courses. So February obviously a little bit quieter. March has really ramped up, and then April starts to taper off a little bit, but we've still got, looking at my calendar here, roughly 12 evenings or so planned for April, and we did have another course that we've changed that one, so that will move later on in the year. So quite possibly actually April is roughly the same as March in some capacity. Across February and March, we've been able to host coaching courses at Kellyville United, Glenhaven, Borkham Hills, North Rocks, Castle Hill, Winston Hills. So some of those haven't quite got there yet. So Castle Hill, Winston Hills, North Rocks haven't started yet. So we're about halfway through that list. And the really pleasing thing for me, just with the graphics, sort of shows that we've been able to provide some courses in almost all areas of our boundaries at the moment, and we want to make sure that we can provide easy access for as many coaches as possible, and we don't want everyone to have to travel to the same location, because that just provides more opportunities for people to say no or not do it. I know later on in the year, so May, we've got something planned for Rams. I think Kellyville might have another one. Kellyville United might have another one. Kellyville Colts have been talking about some. So there's still other ones to come up throughout the year as well. Obviously, this time of the year is the busiest period to try and get as many people as credited and give some introduction before the season starts. So massive thank you to all those clubs that have jumped on board so far and the ones that have got stuff planned. And I guess a little call out for those that haven't done anything yet. And if you want something, let us know. What we have been able to do though is still provide those courses open to the coaches within the association. So we haven't just locked them off just for participants at that club. So there's still been a decent access for people to be able to get to those venues. So very happy with that. Pretty much the only night we haven't been delivering a course is really on a Friday. I think we can all guess that most people don't want to come out on a Friday night. So that's we trialed a couple of Friday sessions and it just never took off. So we've kind of taken those ones back off, and probably not worth doing it. So why a coaching course? Quite simply, and better coaches, in our opinion, equals better players. If we've got some better coaches, then they should be able to teach more to those players. The question I would like to ask yourselves, just a rhetorical question at this stage, how many of your coaches would, first of all, have a coaching certificate? Of those, how many would have an age-appropriate certificate? Because there'll be plenty out there that have a C license but are coaching Miniroos, or have a Miniroo certificate but they're coaching all age or something like that. And how many of those then coaches that have a certificate but have it in date and not expired? Some very quick, relatively estimated number was from 2019 coaches. There was about 19% of the coaches in the association had an in-date qualification. This also doesn't take into if it was age-appropriate qualification. So our starting base, if that's true, is pretty low. And would you send your child to school if only 19% of the teachers at the school had a qualification? I think we would all answer no straight away. Yes, we do understand community football is a little bit different. We can't expect everyone to have coaches just lined up, ready to go, and we rely on volunteers. So it's in many cases luck of what we get. But I think we can all do a little bit better to help provide that coach with a little bit more education. And that's more from the association point of view, being able to get out there and deliver courses at convenient times, at convenient locations, to help provide coaches with some experience. And the reasons why. So there's a study that was done over in America, the Change in the Game project, that looked across sport in general, wasn't just one particular sport. And they came up with these 7 reasons why children tended to drop out of sport. No longer fun, loss of ownership of the experience, lack of playing time, which probably relates to probably number 1 and number 2, afraid to make mistakes, feeling disrespected, and most of that was actually aimed towards the coach from what I read, a bit of burnout, a bit of sort of just over it, and didn't like the coach. Looking at all those 7, I think a better coach or a more experienced coach, a better qualified coach, a more knowledgeable coach probably can influence all 7 of those and potentially reduce the chance of children to be dropping out. Can I put any correlation between this study and Hills football or even football in Australia? At this stage, no. It's just interesting though to compare that and say, are we providing the best opportunities for all of our players to have a lifelong affiliation with football and continue to play from under 6s all the way through to all age, over 35, over 45s, all within the same football club? And I guess you guys would be able to answer that question better than me. You're on the ground a lot more in your space and see year on year a lot of players coming through. If you've got questions about any of those, I think looking at how we educate and support some coaches could potentially influence our players. And part of my thought on this is I'd love to be in a position where the association doesn't spend any money marketing for new players each year. That our just retention of numbers is so solid each year that they just keep on flowing through because they've had such a great experience. Definitely some research to do there to find out how much truth and relevance there is in our space for that. So what could a coaching course provide a coach? I believe that all the courses we deliver, which you can see the certificates on the left there, are Miniroo certificate, skill training certificate, and game training certificate, as well as we do have the options to run a C license with Football New South Wales at the end of each year. But to be honest, I'm not really targeting C license at our space at the moment. There's always some that want to do it, which is great, but I want to target more the beginner coach, the one that is just a happy helper, the mum or the dad that's just putting their name forwards for the first year, and not worry about the C license content for that one, because that's far bigger than what I'm really intending with this. But these 3 courses that hopefully, once we capture someone as a Miniroos coach, starting at under 6s or under 7s, maybe even under 8s, those sort of entry year groups to club football, the courses last for 4 years. So quite simply, if we can provide that coach with a good foundation and a good experience, and in their first season, hopefully we've grabbed them and we've got them for every year. I know there's a bit of every year the parents expect the same person to be coaching, because it's kind of the normal thing, which is what we want to be able to do. And we want to be able to have a success rate with those coaches that they do follow through. And if you coach under 6s, under 7s, under 8s, under 9s, you do your 4 years there, that covers you for your Miniroo certificate for 4 years. A Miniroo certificate is about a 3-hour course, and it's free. So potentially this one coach could be coaching for 4 seasons with maybe even the same group of players, and all they've had to do is one certificate across 4 years of one evening of 3 hours. When we put it that way, that's not much. Then the certificate expires, and then the players sort of gone 7s, 8s, 9s, 12s sort of area. Now they're into 13s, and they can do a sort of a skill act training certificate. That one gets a little bit bigger. That one is a 3-evening session and costs $90, which I'm really pleased that a number of local clubs are actually funding that or reimbursing the coaches to be able to undertake those courses as well. So that again accredits a coach for another 4 years. They travel through the journey, and by the time their license is expired, the players are in an older age group again, and we're into game training, and then they're into really adult football. So you could have a coach that delivers or coaches at your club for 12 years with roughly the same sort of players. Within that 12-year space, all we would be looking to educate that coach on is minimum of 3 courses, which would take you, the game training certificate is 4 evenings. So that's going to be 8 evenings or weekends or what have you across 12 years. That, I think, is if a coach knew that they were going to coach for that long in that space, I think they would all say that's a pretty good deal across there. Do we know if they're ever going to last that long? No. So we've got to make sure nice and early we can grab them in and give them experience that they find valuable and the players and the parents find valuable. So what would a coaching course provide? I believe it would help with their language skills around how to communicate, what to communicate, their observation skills of what to coach and how to coach, build some confidence within the coaches, especially the first-time coaches. And I've had a number of coaches on the courses saying, I feel so much more relaxed about what we've got to do. Now this is my first time ever coaching, and you've kind of made it feel a little bit easy. It's definitely not easy. It's a lot easier to coach adults pretending to be children than it is children being children, trust me. Different ways to reflect about your sessions and different ways to plan your sessions. One of the regular questions I get from new coaches is, I need session plans. I need to know what I'm going to teach for the whole year. I don't know what I'm going to do. And quite simply, you probably only need 6 good sessions, depending on the space that you're working in. If you're working with the fun skills under 7s, under 6s, you probably only need 6 good session plans, and then you just tweak them ever so slightly to make them harder, make them easier as we go. You don't need to reinvent the wheel and come up with brilliant sessions or brand new innovative sessions every single week, because ultimately it all ends up in a game of football. So don't try and make it too difficult. They gain a little support network, especially these courses that we're delivering at the moment, where there's a good core group of coaches from the same club at those clubs. Starts to get coaches talking to each other from within the same club that they actually wouldn't talk to normally or wouldn't really see, especially if you're a larger club that's got 4 or 5 fields that could be happening and training on the same night, and you're all split over the place. And when we've had the CCCs or similar people in similar capacities down at the training grounds for those certificates as well, help give a face to an email, and generally finds that a little bit easier and more approachable. And then any course, even if you coach for 1,000 years, you're still going to add something to your knowledge, and there's still going to be one thing at the very minimum that you can take away. But that's just for the coaches. What about for the clubs? I believe that better coaches and more qualified coaches will improve player retention every year. So there's less onus on needing to go grab new players, try and attract new players. It will improve your coach retention. Trying to get volunteers every year is very difficult. So if you can keep the same coach each year, as long as you're happy with him or her, then makes life a bit easier there. And hopefully, I would like to see less external football providers in our footprint. So the individual companies that sort of make money out of football, I'd love to see those guys start to reduce. And that I don't think is going to happen until we can provide something that competes with them. And if it becomes comparable quality in clubland at a far better price, I think we all know where the foot traffic will travel to. And I would like to see less people able to profit from the regular parents that come into that space. And that's just me personally. I'm sure there'll be other people that might suggest differently. But that also might then mean it's cheaper on your football club. If you're a club that does have external providers in there because they provide a service, which is brilliant. We do the same thing to some. We have provided some coaching services to clubs this year. But ideally, we want to be able to get to a position where your club doesn't need someone to come in there because your coaches are qualified enough, they're experienced enough, and they're quality enough. Because in theory, that should be cheaper as well. And hopefully, long-term player development. We should be able to see a 10-year-old go through your club for 10 years and play in your all-age threes, in your prems, in your reserve grade, and flow through and have that constant chain of players going through. If you do have a Premier League or whatever your pinnacle age group is within your club, you're always just a little conveyor belt churning out some talent that's going to come into that team each year, whether it be male or female. And then ultimately, if we're getting more players that are better quality, that's going to improve the division quality. I think we've all seen many occasions, not just last season, but the years before, where there's runaway teams in certain divisions, or there's not enough depth to have two divisions and someone's getting smashed every week at the bottom. Hill's football point of view, we'd love to have everyone drawing every single week, because that means the competition is at the same level. We don't want to have polar opposites. And ultimately that work is done down on the grass to develop football players, not in an office, just putting teams on the piece of paper. So another reason why I'd love to get more coaches qualified to hopefully bring up the standard of our competitions, male and female. But that's going to be a long-term scenario. You're not going to see benefits of that within the space of 1 season, 2 seasons. So future process. This email went out a little while ago, probably 2-3 weeks ago, maybe. What we've set up on our website. So if you go to our front page of the Hillsfoot website, scroll across to where it says coaches. It'll bring up this little drop-down menu, club coaching course request, and this brings up then this web page. If you scroll, this tells you about the courses. And you scroll further down, there's a form within that web page. If you as a club have a date, time, type of certificate, it's just some idea of a course you want to do, you can submit this. It gets sent directly to me. And we can just basically go ahead and book things in from that period on. If you want to have a discussion around what you don't know exactly what it looks like and how you want to do things, then great, come to me. My phone number is readily available for people to ask questions like that. But if you know what you want every year, you want to book in courses, great, just go fill in that form. Should take you 5 minutes. The longest part of it will normally be knowing what days or rough days you want to have the grounds that we can then book it in for. So, big target. Said before, our current accreditation predicted number is 19%. Hopefully we're going to be a bit higher than that once we actually sit down and pull all the information and have all the coaches registered for this season. But I doubt it's going to go up drastically from 19%. Our ambition, our pie in the sky number is 80%. We want to have 80% of coaches in the association with, first and foremost, a qualification that is in date. From there, we'll then try and break it down to 80% of age-appropriate certificates. At this stage, we're just going to go 80% of any in-date accreditation. What we're going to try and do is once we've got the numbers and the coaches all registered and bits and pieces, is we're actually going to try and pull the information and cross correlate it all to see what each individual club's total current accreditation percentage is. So that then we're gonna, how we deliver that, I don't know. Hopefully it's not going to be too public. We might just send you an email or a picture of something and say your current club has whatever percentage, and what's that in relation to some of the others? Where do you sit in terms of the average? So then I as Hills Football and the Coach Ed staff know potentially which clubs we need to target first of all, which ones we need to help with. The positive side of that is I know there's already certain clubs out in our current association that are mandating qualifications at their club. So there will be some that will be quite high. There will be some that are quite low. I don't think we need to go to the stage of mandating qualifications quite yet, because I'd still like to see, I don't want people to be coming courses because they're forced to, particularly while they're a volunteer coach. I'd love them to feel that there's a buy-in, or just a little nudge, a bit of pressure on them to actually get it done though. If you are considering as your club where you might make your first inroads to increase your percentage of qualified coaches, or if you are wanting to make it mandated, my recommendation would be not starting with the older ones, would actually be starting with the younger ones. Start in your fun skills, start in your 6s and your 7s and your 8s, because first of all, it's a free course that is one night a week and it's for 3 hours. So you've got far less, if you do as a club go and mandate it, you're going to get less kickback because it's the least inconvenience to them as possible. And then hopefully in the future, they grow and they just continue and they get used to, that's just the expectation, that they have to do a coaching accreditation, rather than trying to change too much behavior of the ones that you've already got. I don't want any club to have to go through unnecessary heartache just to get a coaching accreditation done for someone along those lines. But 80%, and what I would really appreciate is as clubs to try and support us on that, try and help me when we are delivering courses at your club or in the area, how you can help push that, how you can help flow some of your coaches within those courses. One of the most common responses we get is, "Oh, but my team's coaching, my team trains that night. I'm pretty sure they can play a game, or someone else can take them for one evening if it's a Miniroo certificate that you need to do." I will keep everyone updated with our 80% and how we're tracking with that as we go. Hopefully at our next meeting we'll have some more numbers around 2021 coaching accreditation numbers and some comparisons to some true numbers.
And can I just come in for a minute?
Go.
Sorry. What's lost everywhere in this is that these coaches are volunteers.
Yes.
I know, especially at our club, most of our coaches are owners of their own business.
Okay.
And they make one day a week available for their training. And to ask them to do this, it's not going to happen. We can lead a horse to water. We can't make it drink. So, you know, where I know the whole idea of where you're coming from, Dan, and I respect that, but the association is also going to have to take consideration in regards to clubs that are 0% or 2% in the accreditations, the reasons behind why.
Yeah, there's not going to be any punishments or sanctions or anything if you do end up on 0%. It's not like we're going to say, right, well, now you can't play Div 1 or Prems or what have you. There's nothing going to be of that level, for sure. If not 100% of the coaches in the association are volunteers, maybe not quite 100%, but 99% of them would be volunteers. So we have to be very mindful of that, definitely, Sue, and try and make life a lot easier for them. Try and take away a lot of the barriers that if we are putting on a coaching course and they can only spare one night a week, well, let's make it one night a week for them at a time that is a time of the year that is convenient for them. Once I've got some numbers from this year around which clubs are very low, what I would like to be able to do is have a chat with CCC or coaching director or president or someone within that club about, well, what strategies could we put in place and maybe tailor it towards your club. That Kenthurst means it might have to do one way, but Castle Hill or St Bernadette's or someone else, just choosing three clubs there, they might have to do something slightly different. Maybe we run a course that's on a weekend so that evenings are freed up. What I would like to see, if possible, is in that sort of March period, like now when the grounds are closed, if I can find out from council which grounds are going to be open, we could go and target the clubs that have got grounds that are going to be open in that time frame and do a little road show within March. That one year we come out to Kenthurst to do 2 or 3 courses in March. The next year we go to Winston Hills. The next year we go to somewhere else. So we don't have to try and drag it through the same club every single year, because ideally your coaches stay there for every year, right? But in a lot of the scenarios, they don't. They change clubs, they change sports, their work scenario changes, so they can't coach, so someone else has to coach. So that team might go through a cycle in 4 years of having 4 different coaches. So we don't want to scare people away either from doing that, but definitely something to be mindful of. But also another challenge to go, well, how can we cater for them a little bit better within that? So yeah, so if you've got any ideas in relation to your club about how we could tailor things to make it more accessible, I'd love to hear on those sorts of scenarios as well.
How long is a piece of string?
Come and take it for them right at their training session or something. Okay, well, that's our big scary number. Who knows if we ever get to 80%? But any support that yourselves can provide within that will be much appreciated to make sure that we can get there. Because I'm a firm believer, as I should be, that better coaches means better players, which means better experience, and keeps our retention rate lovely and high.
Dan, it's Carlos. Thanks. Can I quickly interrupt?
Go for it before we move on.
I just thought on the other side of the question that was just asked, any tips from yourself or from the crew out there on retaining coaches as well? Like, what do they do well? Because obviously, once you've got them in and they're coaching, we do lose coaches all the time as well. So any good tips on how to retain these coaches would be much appreciated.
Yeah, again, how long is a piece of string? As Sue said, there's 1,000 different scenarios that each individual is slightly different that you're going to manage. Enjoyable experience is probably, from what I've spoken to, as they are volunteers, if they feel like it's a pain or a chore that they're going and doing that and they're not enjoying it, they're probably not going to come back. Even if their child is still playing, they're going to find an excuse. So how can it be enjoyable? Well, that one's tough because each person's what they enjoy is slightly different. You could have that coach that just wants to win every single week. So if they finished mid-table, I didn't really enjoy that, or finished bottom of the table, well, you don't necessarily get too much opinion or too much say-so in what division you play in at times. So you kind of lump with what you got. Depending on how you do your grading, you're a little bit limited to what players you get. And some coaches want to sort of handpick their superstar team, and the way your club does it, no, this is what you've got, and off you go with it. A number of them will say that they didn't get any support from the club or from an individual or from the association. So I think one area we can all do better, myself included, is trying to get out on the grass a lot more this year. Last year was obviously the scenario we were in, and provide that support. However, myself and Zach are only 2 people. You might only have, if you're lucky, 2 or 3 people that help in a coaching capacity at your club. In many cases, you're probably just a one. How many teams have you got at your club? You could be a large club with, well, Class, your club is a large club. I don't know. You might have 60 odd teams or so in your club. How are you going to get to 60 teams in a week?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think support is where I was sort of going. Like, you try and support them with material things like jackets and polo shirts and do barbecues sort of thing. But I just thought I'd throw it out there in case there's anyone else had some great ideas. So.
I've spoken to northern suburbs a bit of length on this one. They found that more support around what they're going to do at training sessions made a difference. So they created a new app. Instead of just giving you the electronic session plans, here's 10 session plans for your next 10 weeks. Off you go do your thing, because quite often they forget where that email is and they're only remembering as they're driving to training, where is that session plan? And then they get to training, they find it and they don't really understand it. Northern suburbs did a lot more video work, and then they would, similar to what I've got on the screen now, they'd have a diagram up there of what it was, and then the next 30 seconds was a video of what it looked like and how it moved and what you would say. So I'm looking into trying to pinch that element and try and bring something, if not their one, doing one of our own, so that the coaches can have an app on their phone that brings up stuff a lot more. Couple of clicks and you're there. Watch it on the train on the way home from work, bits and pieces like that. So providing a little bit more support there. One of the other elements northern suburbs thought was crucial in their coach development was they found the clubs that were doing it really well and having high retention rates had lots of, I guess not lots of, more volunteers or more people in coaching roles, support roles for their club. That they actually told me of one club, and I can't remember what the name of the club is, but they told me that this club had about 8 CCCs. And what they did then is they broke that down, that they had one person that was sort of the lead coaching coordinator, but then they would have like Miniroo's male, Mintildas female, that have non-competition male, non-competition female, or then into the youth space, into the senior space, into the overs space. And they would have one person that would only maybe be looking after 6 age groups or 6 teams or something like that, rather than how we typically have it at the moment, because we have less volunteers seemingly in a lot of our clubs, where you've got one person that looks after the entire football club and you can't then access 60 odd coaches in a week. Very difficult to get them to come to meetings when they don't know you don't know them. So that program they really sort of pushed, and that's one of my thoughts for our next meeting for middle of the year roughly will be, everyone that comes on, can you bring one person that is just a coach in your club but doesn't do anything else, that potentially you might be able to give a tap on their shoulder later on and try and coerce them into a slightly bigger role of that, but just give them a little sneak peek behind the curtain of a couple of things, and grow that support for yourselves, so that you don't feel the burden that you've got to go and support 60, 70 coaches within your club to make sure you give them a great experience. You might only need to look after 4 lead coaches that then look after 10 coaches each or something like that. That's a way that northern suburbs think that they've done very well as well. But until we, I guess, can get out there and talk to more people, it's all going to be a bit of hearsay, isn't it? A bit of having a stab and see what our best guess will give us. Any other questions on the coaching side of things? All right, perfect. So we'll move on to under 13 girls and the new playing format. So first year for the girls in Hills football space, playing like this. And what I wanted to go through was basically from a technical aspect, why would I support the move of this and not playing 11v11? Straightforward, the easiest way is the Football New South Wales competitions with the GSAP. They play 10v10 for under 13s, so it's very easy just to match up, making the same as the same. If in GirlSAP, which in theory should be the best development program or division for players in that sort of space, then we should be trying to aspire to be doing the same. But essentially, there's 4 points here that I thought were my 4 main reasons why this 10v10 format helps. First of all, is a more appropriate passing distances. So playing a full field, there wasn't too many times where a 12-year-old girl and 12-year-old boys to some extent as well was able to play the same relative distance of pass that an adult would be able to play. For example, a goalkeeper should feel somewhat comfortable that they can hit the halfway line or similar to, in my opinion, regardless of the age group that they're playing. Playing from a regular goal kick in the 6-yard box, there's almost no chance of a 12-year-old being able to play the ball to the halfway line. Putting the ball near to the box, we've got a decent enough chance of something like that being able to happen on the fly if we need to. The goals that are scored in 10v10 tend to have more combination plays rather than breakaways. So I clearly remember now watching the under-13s grand final Div 1 last season at Burnham Lane. And there was times where there was a goal that was scored. The young girl for Castle Hill got it just inside the halfway line because the back 4 of the opposition had squeezed up because they were too far away from their midfielders. This young girl got it inside the centre circle or so, about 10 metres inside her own half, and ran the entire distance of that half of the field and then toe poked it into the goal inside the 6-yard box because the opposition ended up having to push their back 4 higher to condense the play, and their goalkeeper was standing on the goal line. So this girl's run best part of 50 metres to go and score a goal there, which I think is fairly unrealistic in if we're looking at top level football and working our way back. Yes, there's going to be tendencies that those things happen for sure, and different ability levels and fitness levels makes a difference, but it shouldn't be happening as much as it does, in my opinion. Leading on to goalkeepers. So this poor goalkeeper was standing on the goal line, and the girl literally came up to her and toe poked it past her from a couple of meters away into the far corner of the goal. And this little goalkeeper was just jumped across to try and get it, but she was tiny in comparison to the size of that goal. Having a 10v10 format with smaller goals gives the goalkeepers more chance of making saves, and also provides a more realistic challenge for a striker or for anyone scoring a goal. Ultimately, if you've got a 12-year-old in a full-size goal, I'm probably shooting nice and high because there's lots of space there, and they're not. Mum and dad need to get on a step ladder to put the nets on in the morning, but yet we expect this 12-year-old to be able to reach the crossbar and make a save, which is unrealistic. And by the time they get to hopefully playing all-age prems or even Matildas, hopefully one day, shooting high isn't necessarily the right option, and we should probably be teaching to score in the bottom corners. So it creates a more relative challenge for goal scorers, and it gives more chance of a goalkeeper being able to make some saves and hopefully give them some confidence rather than going, I never want to go in goal because I concede 7 every time I go in there. And then ultimately more realism across all. Adding that all together, I believe that there is more realism in a game, although the players and the parents are probably, it's not real because it's not 11v11. It's almost there. As an example, just to highlight my point, this is taken from a GSAP game last year, under 13s, playing box to box at Bella Vista School. I think it was pretty much our last home game of the season. It took me you can see on the timer here, we're 4 minutes into the game, so it didn't take me very long to find some footage. And the only reason I chose this game was because I knew Spartans would be wearing orange, so it was nice and obvious to see two different teams playing out there. But you can see where the penalty boxes are sort of lined out by the flat cones. So everyone in this picture, excluding the goalkeepers, is roughly within 30 meters of each other from front to back, meaning that pretty much every player should be able to reach everyone with a realistic passing distance. It also means that the gaps between the lines aren't massive, so that forces them to have to play some combinations to have to get into this space. If that girl wants to play direct into this space, it's probably going to lead towards the goalkeeper getting the ball. Whereas in comparison, the same team playing here in a friendly game against the GCL girls, playing against the team of the year above, playing on 11v11. We did this on purpose at the end of the year to sort of expose them to 11v11. Very balls in very sort of similar area of the field. So here's the Spartans girl with the ball on this one. Here's the Hills girl with on the ball on this one. We've now got players, obviously this goes offside, but we've got players that are over a larger stretch of the field, and we can't even see where the goalkeeper is, and there is a goalkeeper in that picture. There is a goal scored from this, from the ball going down here. This young girl literally runs all the way down into, catches it up near the byline, turns, dribbles across, and one of these two, I believe it is, taps it in on the back post. So these types of goals will still happen regardless. They will still happen. But in this scenario, I believe, and I believe Football New South Wales would say the same thing, it's going to be limited through, and it's going to have to then create more combinations and more onus on technical ability to find their way through, rather than this one of a bit of a hit and hope play into the space, and then just an athletic player being able to run. And they don't even need to be that athletic when the defenders are all facing the wrong way. So hopefully, if we're creating more touches on the ball, more combinations, more connections in tight areas, they're going to be better players, and there's going to be less blowouts in terms of scores as well. Particularly for those teams that are bottom of the table, playing top of the table, they've got more chance of being able to compete in that game for longer, and try and jag a result and not have a scoreline where they're asking for a mercy rule.
Hey Dan, Jim just rang me to say, why aren't 13 boys doing it? I think we discussed it the other day.
Yeah. My personal opinion is I think they should. My personal opinion is all sides for football should be on small-sided games. This one was relatively easier for us to mix or compare to the Hill. It was easier for the girls move because GSAP are playing that, so it's easier to compare it to what that Football New South Wales competition landscape looks like. In the Football New South Wales competition landscape, the 13 boys are playing 11v11. We would be the only association in the state to be playing that, unless someone corrects me. What I'm actually pushing for on that one is not for us to go and change the boys' space straight away. It's actually to try and have Football New South Wales change the boys' space and mandate it across the board. Because we already went one step further with the 12 boys playing 9v9. A lot of associations still play the 12s at 11v11. So I agree. That's my personal opinion. They should be. I think this one's a harder battle to face, and I want to try and actually encourage that to happen across the state. So I'm trying to encourage Football New South Wales to make a bigger decision on that. Once I hear back from them, we'll sort of know which way do we just go do it ourselves anyway, because we think it's better, or do we stick it out? But it'll be a good one to take to the competition subcommittee next time that they meet as well.
Dan, does that mean we have to, it's a different field set up as well? We wouldn't be able to use our main field for the normal age groups from 13s up, 11v11. Would clubs have to have another field set up for this?
you wouldn't have to have another field as such. You would still be able to use the same field. It would be similar to what you do already with under 12s. So under 12 boys and girls play across the field. All your difference is now you're just taking the goals from being across on sideline to then box to box. So yes, there would be an element of setup on a day to change over, because this age group would be the only ones that set up in this fashion. So you would be setting up a field for one purpose, but how you configure your fields, there is I believe Nicole has already sent it out to all the clubs, the specifications of what the field sizes needs to be, because it's not exactly box to box and full width. You can go slightly less, and on the smaller fields, I think you can go slightly longer. There's some fields where it might be 6-yard box type scenario, because you're on that dimensions that are already there is slightly smaller than some of the others. So I would need to get access to Nicole's stuff, which obviously she's not in the office right now, and then just clarify exactly what that looks like. But yes, there would be a slight little change for that age group on that day. How we do that in a GSAP space, because we have the same problem that we'll have the 12s playing across the field first of all, and then the 13s come on with this setup. We set up half of the field that's not being used already, and then at the end of the 12s game, we quickly run off the gazebos and the benches that are on the center circle, and then some of the parents run on and move the goal across, and it takes about 5 minutes. But having said that, we're guaranteed that there's only one under 12s game on at the time, so we can do the donkey work and set up half the field beforehand.
Well, we've got dedicated under 12s, so we don't use our main fields for our under 12s.
Okay, so potentially they might be able to fit within that, depending on what the specs are.
Okay.
Yeah, possibly. So a quick summary of some of the rules. So obviously it's 10v10, including your goalkeeper. I've just drawn out some positions there, which that's sort of typically the formation that I would use. Again, it's up to the coach on the field as to what formation they play. We're not going to go and say you have to do whatever. That's my recommendation would be a 3-3-3, and then you just add in a centre back in later on, or you might drop in a midfielder back and play a back four, and then you just add in a midfielder in later on. So it's only one player you're adding in wherever you want, but it's up to your coaches to find what suits best for the playing group that you've got. Length is generally box to box, and then you just whack the goal on the top of the D of the penalty box, and then you drop out about 6 cones, flat markers on the field for the size of the penalty boxes. In Hills football space, it will still be competition with a table, so there will be offsides, as there currently is in the within that, so that doesn't change. You can see on my diagram, I've got the 4 pink cones on the sideline, so that's for the goalkeeper exclusion zone. So the goalkeeper is allowed to play the pass when it's a restart of play. The ball's gone out of play. For a goal kick, is allowed to restart, and the defenders get 1 touch free, and then they can be closed down. So it's not really a free touch, but they're allowed to get the touch before they're closed down. One thing I would like all clubs, if possible, to do is pass that information on to their coaches and make sure that they are aware that to allow the opposition to play that first pass. Once they get a few years older and the goalkeeper can play over different lines, or they can play through, we don't just want to set up the press every single time that they go and press off an immediate goal kick, set them up into different scenarios. Goalkeepers can play a drop kick. So when the keeper claims the ball, so the ball is technically still in play, they can throw it, they can kick it from their hands, or if they wish, they can put it down on the ground to play as well. But as soon as they put it down on the ground, the ball's in play and they can be tackled. And obviously, if it goes out for a goal kick, it's gone out of bounds, then it's a goal kick from the floor. And there are foul throws. within this one. It's not the 2 chances and then play on. This is foul throws. The foul throws, the offsides, and the goal kicks are actually slightly different to GSAP space. In a GSAP space, it's just retake it, have a go. They can't drop kick it, and there are no offsides. That's because in a GSAP space, it's a non-competition space. We're not keeping tables and ladders, but in Hills football, we are. So we merge it a little bit closer to what the 14 space will look like ready for next year. But other than that, there shouldn't be any surprises or anything looking different. I did experience last year when I sent it up to Bella Vista for the girls. I tinkered with the field sizes that I actually trialed bringing it into the minimum specs on terms of width. And I found that it just wasn't worth the time to set that up, and just was far more beneficial to set it up to the full width of the field rather than having to walk around and set out some more cones. And then the next year they're going to full width and full length. So you might as well give them 50% of that stuff to get used to within 1 year anyway, rather than really bringing it all in all directions. Any questions on 10v10 for the girls under 13s before we wrap this one up? Move on.
So Dan, this is going to be conveyed to all the clubs so they know what the rules are.
I believe Nicole has already sent something out in terms of specifications. In terms of the rules, I believe there's going to be something sent out to the referees coordinators, but all the referees should know this as well. I just put this slide up here more for if you can pass on to your coaches, just so they have an idea of what this sort of looks like. Actually, I can even give you access to the slides, and then you can just pass the slides on to them. Just send them this exact picture or something like that, just so that they know what they're screaming about on the sideline and not causing the 14-year-old referee that's there a bit of confusion.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Any other good questions? Okay, pre-grading. You all do your own little grading process as it is, and to be honest, you do a fantastic job as clubs, and there isn't too often that I think you get it wrong, to be honest. It's more a case of the times that it seemingly is wrong is when there isn't enough teams in each division, and we've got to bump clubs up just to make an even number or a relative number for a competition from a Hills football point of view, to be honest. But grading is a question I always sort of get around this time of the year: how to do it, what's the best way to do it, what is there any tricks of the trade? And quite simply, no, there's not. There's a million different ways you could do it, and it's up to you. But in my experience, it's about trying to grab some information before you get to grading. If you as a club can find a great experience and you're fortunate enough that you can offer different teams within different divisions, different grades within the same year group, you're not just under 12 twos and that's all you've got. You've got under 14s 1, 2 and 3s or something like that. You've got a bit more balance where you can pick and choose. My suggestion would be to do some pre-grading and grab some data before the season finishes, because you do all your grading, you go, right, this is our team, we're going to nominate you for this division at the start for the start of the season. Well, to be honest, who says that that's actually the standard of that division? You could nominate them for Div 2 because we think they're roughly a Div 2 sort of side, but what if the year group, there's the 3 best Div 1 teams from last year, they've all walked off and gone to NPL land, or they've just changed sports or something like that, gone to a different association. So knowing actually what division that we should be allocating teams for, I think is a little bit of a false pretense that we don't know what the standard of the competition is until we actually get out there and we start playing. But the hope is it should be somewhat relative to what last year's divisions looked like. What I would be doing if I was in your space would be asking at the end of the season for every coach just to provide a very small summary on the playing group that they had. And I've done a very quick mock-up on the side here. Chose some really tough names to pronounce, and just said, right, so if I was a coach of this team, they're the under 14s, they're known as the red team within my club. They could have a red and a blue team. This is the red team. And then all you need to do is say, right, Adam was appropriate for that skill level. Ben possibly could go higher. Colin could possibly go lower. Dan definitely needs to go lower. And you then might have another player that goes, he definitely needs to play higher. And then you can have some information on them already. So when you come to doing your actual grading session, you can sort of tick them off as their regos come in. And you could potentially even have the nucleus of each team graded before you even turn up on the field. And hopefully, if your retention of numbers is very strong, you're only really grading the new players to the club and trying to merge them to see who they fit with. And you might already have, in an ideal scenario, 10 or 12 of those players already done. If you've got two teams, a Div 1 and a Div 2, maybe towards the end of the year, those two teams start to train together a little bit more. And the two coaches at the end of the year, yeah, look, that player needs to come up, that player needs to go down, let's do 2 and 2, just swap them over. And try and reduce a lot of that onus on the workload of the clubs. Obviously, you're going to have to grade the new players. We can't really do much about this at this stage. But the players that we have some information on, we should already have some rough idea. And to be fair, I think most of it happens out there. But that would be my biggest suggestion from those that have asked me. Build some information beforehand, build a core group, and then you know roughly where you're going to go, where you're not going to go. Potentially Dan Elliott in this team, who needs to go down to the next grade, might not be able to go down because there is no team below that. Or once he goes down, that he's actually still too good for that. So he needs to be the small fish in that little pond. And I don't think you need to ask for war and peace and big in-depth analysis from each coach when they hand their bag of balls back at the end of the season and their bibs and bits and pieces. They can just write it on a team sheet. Okay, Miniroos and Mintildas. 3 things that I would like to see or recommendations in this space going forwards. Obviously, we've got 2 versions of this. You've got the in-house stuff and the non-competition stuff. I'll start with the in-house. That essentially nothing's really that different other than for number 3 there. The 4v4 element is very flexible on an in-house program because you all are the same club and it's a lot easier to change bibs over and bits and pieces and keep it flexible and try and encourage playing groups to be equal sort of level and get as many draws happening as we possibly can within an in-house space. In a non-competition space where you are playing club versus club, that becomes a lot harder. You can't really just take someone's jersey off and swap clubs for that half an hour of game time. So what I would recommend clubs do in terms of speaking to their coaches in that space is encourage them to play football for all. So they, as an onus of me coaching team A, still have an onus in trying to educate team B, even though they're not my players and I might not ever come across them again in this season. But can both teams experience football? At some point, if not every week, there's going to be one team that is stronger than another team, and there's probably going to be a team that wins and a team that loses. That's fine. That happens. We've got to get these players used to that. We can't always have it nice and fluffy and participation awards and draws and good job, guys. But what we don't want to have is 12-0s and bits and pieces like that. So how can the coaches, when they first get there, work out who they're playing against? Encourage each coach to have a conversation with the opposition. Hey guys, how are you? This is my team today. I've only got 5 players. How many players have you got? Blah 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 blah. How have you been going? Yep, we've won every game so far. We've done quite well. Okay, well, in that scenario, as you're the team that's probably coming in here with the stronger record, could they, for goal kicks and stuff like that, can they drop further back? Can they start on the halfway line? Allow team B to dribble the ball up a little bit further, get a few more touches on the ball before the chaos comes and it's just a massive huddle of players all over the place? Can we encourage, if it's a kick in or a goal kick or a corner, maybe be a little bit more compromising and allow the other team to have one every now and again that maybe isn't theirs and it's a little bit contentious, but give it to them to help encourage the other team to get down the other end of the field. Because not only if we have a team that's just flogging everyone, it's going to mean there's someone like a goalkeeper at the back end of their field or a defender that's not really touching the ball. So how can we, as much as possible as coaches on those days, be flexible, cooperate with both teams, and try and encourage the ball to be going around everywhere and exposing players to every scenario across that field, not just scoring goals or picking the ball out at the back of the net. And my biggest suggestion for that is just let coach have a conversation, be human about it, and come up with some compromises as we need. I experienced that a lot this year. Last year when I coached my daughter's summer football team. That the days I went and had a chat to the opposition coach, I found that we were a lot more accommodating on the bits and pieces rather than days we just turned up and played. It went to polar opposites a little bit more. I don't know why, it just seemed to happen that way. And then also to remind the coaches that there is no referees in that space. They're game leaders, and most of the time it's children. So what rules they need to learn, what rules they don't need to do, and as much as the players are learning, so are those referees, because hopefully those referees are gonna graduate into fully fledged Premier League and all other variations of football refereeing in the future. But essentially, the biggest part of Miniroos and Mintildas, for those that have done the Miniroo certificate as well, is about engagement and in making it enjoyable. Any questions on the Miniroos and Mintildas before we move on? Great. So something you can share with your coaches and even your players to some extent and yourselves. Some available areas for you to get more support. So we've got the Hills Football Coaches Hub on Facebook. That's a Facebook group that we put some content in there every now and again. Playfootball.com.au has the coaching resources. You see on the right at the top where you have a load of coaching sessions in there. I would recommend suggesting to the coaches, don't just copy and paste those session plans, because that's made up for this imaginary audience, not their playing group. But it might be a really good platform for them to start and then tinker ever so slightly to make it more specific. Down in the bottom left, Play Football, how they find and register for a coaching course, as well as obviously our website and any emails that you guys send out yourself. And then this one on the right is our YouTube page. So this is where this conversation tonight will end up going onto there. We've got a playlist here of coach development. So it's got some example sessions that I've done with audio over the top and some images. It's got some tactical videos. We've got how-to series of how to do tricks and turns. We've got our home training sessions that we did through COVID. We've got, you won't be able to see this one because that's a hidden video. The Premier League live streams they've all been saved and downloaded onto here as well as the grand finals that were recorded, a couple of live sessions, and then some little legend sessions. So our 3 to 5 year old space. So I'm pretty confident across those videos we hit a number of different platforms, and it'll be our challenge across the year to try and add more content to this. So I would recommend sending some coaches to this space to try and observe a few things as they go. All right, coming to the end. Our next meeting is penciled in for Tuesday, the 22nd of June. So we've chose that one for the middle of the season, roughly. We chose a Tuesday night just to offer something different from a Monday. I know that a number of people will probably be out on the park, but given your schedules are so busy, there's pretty much only a Friday is probably the only day people aren't out on the park, and so people don't like doing stuff on a Friday, which is I'm one of them. For that meeting, we'll send out some more communication closer to the time, but we would probably like to extend the offer to bring someone else with you from a different age group or a different element of your club, or someone that's just a coach that you bumped into on the field. From there, we are also looking at potentially a different type of scenario. Can we get into a workshop actually out on the park or something like that? I've actually spoken to Western Sydney Wanderers about us potentially going out to see their training complex as well, and maybe exposing coaches to something they haven't seen before. If that one happens, we will be limited to how many people we can take there, so we might not be able to take the additional guest to that one. But we've obviously got a couple of months until that one there, so I'll send some information closer to the time. So that's essentially me for this evening. Thank you for everyone for jumping on and participating. If you have any questions, this is your time. And my phone number, my email address, anyone wants to contact me about anything coaching related, you know how to get me.
Thank you.
All right, so
Thank you, Dan.
that's us done. If you've got any questions, stay on. If you wanna go, feel free, and hopefully I'll see you down the park very soon.
Thanks, Dan.
See
Thank
ya.
you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Dan.
Enjoy the season.
Thank you.
Dan, you're going to send the slides out?
Yep, I will send that through probably now before I leave, actually.
Too easy, mate. Thanks for tonight, mate. Much appreciated.
Not a problem. Thanks, Carlos.
Bye.
Bye.